Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and this video gonna give my thoughts on WrestleMania 38, both Night 1 and Night 2. And of course, WrestleMania this year was from AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. And WrestleMania this year as a whole, I enjoyed it. I thought this was one of the best WrestleManias in a while. I did have issues with it here and there, but WWE coming out with the win for this year's WrestleMania. Before this WrestleMania even took place, we were all speculating that this was going to be one of the worst WrestleManias that WWE was ever going to produce. Because you look at that card, the card was taken up by celebrities, from Logan Paul to Pat McAfee to Johnny Knoxville, and part-timer there in Stone Cold Steve Austin. And like I said, we were expecting this to be one of the worst WrestleManias that this company was ever going to produce. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I gotta say, Night 1 of this year's WrestleMania was better than Night 2. Night 2's card, when you look at the card for Night 2, it looked absolutely fucking atrocious. But Night 1, in terms of how the pay-per-view flowed throughout the night, it was a very enjoyable show. And I was like, all right, WWE has something here with WrestleMania this year for Night 1. But Night 1's card, we had the Usos versus Boogs and Nakamura for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin, which obviously doesn't scream WrestleMania worthy or quality match. We had The Miz and Logan Paul teaming up to take on Rey and Dominik, Mysterio. The Royal Women's Championship was on the line where Becky Lynch defended the title against Bianca Belair. We had Seth Rollins, taking on a mystery opponent that Vince McMahon was going to give Rollins, saying, "Oh, I'm going to choose a opponent for you," which we saw last Monday on Raw, where Rollins ended up going to WWE headquarters, being in there with Vince. And we had the debut, which I will get to. And you all know who it was. And then we had the SmackDown Women's Championship on the line, Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey. And of course, the Kevin Owens show, with Kevin Owens, interviewing Stone Cold Steve Austin. And a little something that happened after that. So that was all of Night 1 of WrestleMania, the card. So Night 1 of WrestleMania kicked off with the SmackDown Tag Team titles on the line. The Usos defend the titles against Boogs and Nakamura, which I thought it was a okay match. We had Boogs coming out. He introduces Nakamura as he made his way out. Of course, Pat McAfee on the commentary table, just rocking out. And the LED boards were lit up, and the ring apron had, the Mike's Harder Lemonade brand on it. The logo of that was matching the gear that Boogs and Nakamura ended up wearing, which looked cool. And we had the match, Nakamura unloaded on Jimmy Uso, and Nakamura dropped Jimmy, gave him the good vibrations. And we had later on, Boogs was taken out of the match because Boogs was going for a fireman's carry to both the Usos. So he had Jay on his shoulders first, and then he ended up lifting Jimmy. And so both the Usos were on Boogs' shoulders, and Boogs ended up hurting his knee. So Boogs and the Usos end up falling down. Boogs was taken out of the match because of that. So Nakamura was the only one in there to fight off the Usos. So the Usos end up winning because they did the 1D on Nakamura. Because Jimmy delivered the super kick to Nakamura, and that's when the Usos end up hitting the 1D, the double team on Nakamura. So the Usos end up winning the match, retaining the SmackDown Tag Team titles, which obviously we all knew the Usos were going to retain. The Usos are no longer losing those titles anytime soon. But overall, it was an okay match. Next was a match that shouldn't have been on the card. Drew McIntyre versus Happy Corbin. Baron Corbin. This match should have just been on a random edition of SmackDown. When you look at this match, did this scream WrestleMania quality or WrestleMania worthy match? No. This was absolutely boring. So you had McIntyre end up coming out, which, by the way, I didn't review SmackDown, but I watched it. Can you all believe that Madcap Moss won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal on SmackDown on Friday? I'm like, who cares? So, this match, fucking boring. I don't know why they end up putting this match on WrestleMania. So, McIntyre started off the match. He quickly attacked Corbin. Corbin turned it around the corner. McIntyre ended up clotheslining him. McIntyre later on, he was mounting some offense on Corbin. And McIntyre ended up winning the match. He delivered the Claymore to Corbin. And that was pretty much basically that. McIntyre ended up winning. Post-match, McIntyre stood tall in the ring. Moss was on the apron. McIntyre ended up pointing Angela the sword at Moss. McIntyre then ended up slicing at Moss, but Moss ended up escaping out to the floor. And so McIntyre, with the sword, he ended up cutting through the top two ropes. And an explosion went off. And pretty much that was basically that. McIntyre stood tall. But overall, this match was boring. This match did not need to be on the WrestleMania card. Did not scream WrestleMania quality or WrestleMania worthy match. This match could have been done on SmackDown. And then we had Rey and Dominik Mysterio versus Logan Paul and The Miz, which we had the Mysterios end up coming out first, and then The Miz and Logan Paul end up coming out. They were wearing black and yellow gear. And I say, Logan Paul in this match, he was just okay, in my opinion. I say, even though Bad Bunny from last year, the celebrity involvement, sometimes I don't like when celebrities get involved in, these matches, these wrestling matches. But Logan Paul, he did okay. But I gotta say, Bad Bunny from last year was better. But the match itself was just very meh, in my opinion. So, The Miz and Logan Paul end up winning because Miz ended up quickly tagging himself in. And there was a point where Logan Paul did the Three Amigos to Rey Mysterio. So he was doing the Three Amigos, got boos from the crowd, and Logan Paul ended up hitting all three of them. He did a kip up, and Logan Paul ended up going up to the top. He did the Eddie Guerrero shake, and then he hit the frog splash onto Rey, and then he went for the cover, and Dominik ended up breaking up the pin. Dominik then ended up hitting a suicide dive to The Miz. And so, the end of the match, we had Miz end up dropping Rey with the skull crushing finale. There you go. Miz and Logan Paul ended up winning the match. So post-match, The Miz ended up grabbing Logan Paul out of nowhere. Miz dropped Paul with the skull with the Skull Crusher finale, and that was basically that. Logan Paul couldn't believe what the Miz, did to him, hitting the Skull Crusher finale. But you know what this means? This means we're going to be seeing Logan Paul again, and we're going to be seeing the Miz versus Logan Paul. That's going to possibly take place at WrestleMania Backlash. How we are excited to see that match. I know I'm not excited to see that match, and I know a lot of you are probably not excited to see that match. This is a who cares match if that happens, which I know is gonna be. We're gonna begin that possibly at WrestleMania Backlash. So then after that, Stephanie McMahon came out. She wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to the WWE Universe. She was saying how she was blown away by the majesty of WrestleMania and the power of everyone coming out to WrestleMania from different countries and different states and all different backgrounds coming down to celebrate the one thing that we all love, and it's, of course, professional wrestling. She kept saying that we say then, now, and forever for a reason. And so she ended up introducing Gable Steveson. She ended up telling the Olympic gold medal win that Steveson won and his recent NCAA heavyweight championship win. So Gable Steveson came out and he posed for the fans, and that was that. So Gable Steveson ended up, making an appearance there, and of course he's going to be part of the Monday Night Raw brand, which, in my opinion, Gable Steveson is not going to save Monday Night Raw. And then we had Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship, which this was a very good match. Really enjoyed this match between both Bianca and Becky. So Becky Lynch had a special WrestleMania entrance, and the entrance was in the vein of the Marvel Studios logo, where it was just, Becky's face, and at the end said Big Time Bex. So after the entrance, she drove out in a white SUV. So Becky Lynch got out, and Becky Lynch has a new, haircut after Bianca ended up cutting it last week on Monday Night Raw, which Becky looks really nice with the new haircut. So she ended up posing, and she got pyro. So then Bianca Belair's entrance started. So there was a full marching band. It was the Texas Southern University marching band. Came out to do Bianca Belair's entrance. So Bianca came out. Her gear, her attire was inspired by one of the leaders of the marching band. So pretty much she made her way down to the ring. And the crowd was hot during this match. And Bianca ended up offering a handshake for Becky. Becky ended up decking her with a right hand. Bianca Belair blocked a manhandle slam from Becky. And then Becky ended up blocking a quick KOD by Bianca. Becky came back, hit the manhandle slam. And this time, Bianca ended up kicking out. So Becky ended up shaking it off. She ended up rushing Bianca with the disarmer, but Bianca ended up getting to the ropes. She ended up breaking the disarmer. So Bianca ended up going for a roll-up. Becky ended up blocking it. She ended up going for a roll-up of her own. So Bianca delivered a suplex, and Becky ended up hanging on. So Becky, later on, she ended up bringing Bianca back to the ring. She delivered the Bexploder. Bianca stood tall. She got a mixed reaction from the crowd there. She delivered another Bexploder to Bianca, and she ended up going for the cover, which Bianca kicked out at 2. So Becky, at this point in the match, she ended up sending Bianca throw first into the middle rope, focusing on the injury that Bianca had. So, at the end of the match, we had Bianca hitting the KOD on Becky and went for the 1, 2, 3. There you go. Bianca ended up winning the match, and Bianca is the new Raw Women's Champion. So happy for Bianca, and made up for the 19 seconds that Becky ended up beating Bianca last year at SummerSlam and taking back the Raw Women's Championship. But overall, very physical match between Becky Lynch and Bianca. Very enjoyable match. The crowd was hot throughout the entire match. So, but very good match. And then we had Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins made his way out. Of course, he was waiting in the ring for this opponent that Vince ended up choosing for him. And we had the debut. We had the debut of Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes ended up making his way, up, because he came up from the other stage, and the lights ended up dimming. The lights went out, and then as the lights came back on, Cody's music ended up playing. He rised from the stage, and he made his way down, and he had pyro going off in the background. What an awesome moment that was. The crowd popped hard for seeing Cody. And this was a good match between Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. And Cody, WWE needs to have this anticipation for Cody and not screw him up after this match with Seth Rollins. And we had Cody Rhodes end up winning the match, which, of course, Cody had to get the win. He's not losing his first night back in the company. But very good match this was. Happy that Cody is back with WWE. It's, I was fine. I was fine with Cody coming back to WWE. But hopefully WWE doesn't fuck up with Cody. I know a lot of you probably like, oh, I'm giving them a month before Cody feels like everybody else on the Monday Night Raw roster, which Cody Rhodes is going to be a part of the Monday Night Raw roster. So a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, I'm giving Cody a month before Vince gets tired of him. And I'm going to give him a month before Cody feels like everybody else. WWE cannot screw up with Cody Rhodes after what we saw on Saturday night at night 1. That debut was freaking awesome. What a good way for Cody to come back to the company and have that entrance and have the crowd really pop for him. Huge ovation that he had. A very good match from Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. This was a 5-star match, in my opinion. Cody Rhodes being back in WWE after 6 years, and it was the match of the night for night 1, in my opinion. Just very awesome match it was. And then we went to Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship. This was the worst match of night 1, in my opinion. The crowd was dead throughout this whole entire match. This match was boring. And of course we had Charlotte doing her awful looking moonsault as always, which she needs to stop doing that moonsault. Every time she does that moonsault, it gets worse and worse. And even if she doesn't hit it right, she does another moonsault flip. Please, stop doing the moonsault. Charlotte, stop doing the moonsault, because it looks awful every time you do it. Well, we had Charlotte end up winning the match, of course. Charlotte defeated Ronda Rousey, retaining the SmackDown Women's Championship. Who cares? Who cares? And by the looks of this, looks like we're going to be getting more of Ronda and Charlotte. Great! Great! Awful. Absolutely awful. This was the worst match of night one. And then we had the KO show with Kevin Owens, his guest, of course, none other than the WWE Hall of Famer, legend, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So Owens ended up coming out. He got boos from the Texas crowd. And he ended up getting out the mic. He welcomed everyone to the WrestleMania main event edition of the Kevin Owens show. So Kevin Owens was talking about Texas. He ended up saying that he realized that he should have apologized for everything he says. So Owens was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for telling the awful truth about Texas, about the state. He ended up saying that he's been here for a few days and it's actually worse than he remembered. So Owens ended up saying that he feels like fans are eager for him to bring out his guest, of course, Austin. But he's going to bring him out when he wants to, because it is his show, and he's not done telling us how he despises Stone Cold Steve Austin. He ended up saying that his guest is the absolute worst role model in WWE. And Owens ended up saying that he would know because he once looked up to Austin. So Owens ended up saying when Austin sits in this chair, Owens will look at him and tell him that he sucks. And the guy won't do anything about it. He ended up saying he'll take it because he knows if he doesn't show, if Austin doesn't show Owens the respect he deserves, then Owens will drop him with a stunner and pour beer all over his stupid, bald head. So then the sound of the glass breaks and AT&T Stadium popped heavily. It was electric as Stone Cold Steve Austin made his way out. And Austin was pacing around the stage. And Owens was still sitting in his chair. Austin suddenly walked back to the backstage area. Austin came riding out on his ATV. He rode the ATV down the ramp and circled the ring. Austin ended up popping off the ATV, and he got into the ring. Kevin Owens ended up calling for Austin's music to be cut, and he ended up saying that this isn't Austin's show. It's his show. So he had chant of Austin end up breaking out, and we had Austin already. He was angry with Kevin Owens. Owens ended up saying, let's calm down, and he's not here for a fight, just a chat with Austin. So Owens ended up welcoming Austin to the KO show, and he ended up thanking Austin for accepting his invitation. Austin ended up saying that Owens brought him here for a chat after all the trash talking that he's done. He ended up saying that Kevin Owens looks like a jackass, and that he's a stupid son of a bitch for trash talking Texas. So Owens was like, I don't know what's so great about Texas. It's hotter than hell in the summer. And it's not inspiring like Canada is. And that these people wear these dumb hats, these dumb boots, and dumb belt buckles. So Owens ended up feeling for Austin, ended up saying that if he had to grow up in Texas, he would have moved away, maybe to Mexico. So Austin was like to Owens, oh, in about 5 seconds, you're going to have more than 75,000 people calling you an asshole. So then 77,000 people, which was the attendance for night one, because the attendance was 77,899 people that attended night one, which, WWE, they like to state that 77,000 people were there, but it's obviously probably less because you know how they like to gloat on how many people have attended the event, but it's not that type of attendance. That attend the event, they always like to make that up. So I know for a fact it probably wasn't 77,000 people that attended the event. So 77,000 people end up chanting asshole to Kevin Owens. So Owens ended up telling Austin not to be the stereotypical rude, crass Texan, and for Austin to be more like him, the sophisticated French Canadian. Owens ended up revealing that he lied about bringing Austin here for a little talk. Owens ended up saying that he doesn't lie often, but only when he has a good reason. He ended up saying that he tricked Austin because he doesn't want to talk, and that he wants a fight. Owens was looking for a fight with Austin. So Owens ended up saying that he knows it's been 19 years since Austin had his last match, which of course was with The Rock. And his knees, neck, and back were all shot then. So Owens was like, he's sure they're all worse than before. And Owens ended up challenging Austin to a no-holds-barred match. So Kevin Owens ended up saying that Austin knows that he can beat him. So Owens ended up telling Austin to get the hell out of the ring and get his ass back to his ranch. Austin ended up staring Kevin Owens down, and Austin ended up saying that he had his first match right here in Dallas, and he could have his last match here in Dallas. So Austin ended up asking if he wants to see Stone Cold compete in a match against this sack of shit. Give me a hell yeah. So Austin ended up calling for a referee. Owens tossed the mic, and the referee ended up coming down. And Owens ended up getting up from his chair. He tossed the chair out of the ring. And so then we had the match. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kevin Owens. No holds barred match. Austin's first match in 19 years. And I'm going to be honest. I know some people enjoyed this. But for me, I did not enjoy this. I didn't. We have 57-year-old Austin in there. And, his age, he's getting up there. But this was just sad to watch. And yes, I know Austin can't move like he did, years back. He had, neck and knees and back issues. Of course, with his neck, with Owen Hart pile driving him at SummerSlam 97. And just, like I said, this was just sad to watch. When Austin was stomping away at Kevin Owens, he was stomping a mud hole into Kevin Owens. Him laying those out were just very slow. He could barely move, now, considering his age. But Kevin Owens ended up carrying Austin throughout this whole thing. There was a point where Owens ended up suplexing Austin on the concrete in the crowd. And then Austin suplexed Kevin Owens on the stage. And, of course, Austin was going to get the win. Austin ended up delivering the stunner to Kevin Owens, which, that was how Austin won the match. But Austin main eventing in 2022 at WrestleMania. Just, like I said, this was just sad to watch at Austin's age here. But I didn't like this, but if you all liked it, that's fine. Just seeing Austin there, that was just sad because the guy, can't move like he used to because of the issues that he went through with, his neck and his back and his knees. He's getting up there in age. But overall, night one of WrestleMania, very enjoyable show. Like I said, had my issues with it, but still, it was a enjoyable show. Night two, on the other hand, did not top night one. Now, look at the card that we had for night two. We had RKBro versus the Street Profits and the Alpha Academy for the Raw Tag Team titles. Bobby Lashley versus Omos. Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn in an Anything Goes match. The Fatal 4-Way Women's Tag Team match. Sasha Banks and Naomi versus Queen Zelina Vega and Carmella versus Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan and Natalya and Shayna Baszler. Edge versus Styles, which was the match that I looked forward to. Sheamus and Ridge Holland versus The New Day tag team match, which this was originally supposed to be on night 1, but they ended up moving it to night 2. So then also we had Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory, Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, winner takes all match to unify both the WWE Championship and Universal Championship. And after the Pat McAfee Austin Theory match, something else happened there, which I'm going to talk about. The night 2 was not good, in my opinion. So night 2 of WrestleMania opened up with Triple H. Triple H ended up coming out, got a big pop from the crowd. He was in a suit. He marched to the ring, and they ended up chanting, "Thank you, Hunter," at the crowd. Triple H got on the mic, and I gotta say, he looked good. Triple H looked good after coming off the health scare that he had. So Triple H ended up saying that he just wanted to come out and say thank you, and to show us his love in the best way he knows it. So he ended up welcoming everyone to WrestleMania. So the pyro ended up going off, fireworks ended up going off. Triple H ended up leaving his boots in the ring, which that point there, you could already tell that's a symbol of him retiring, which he made public while he was on ESPN. So Triple H left his boots in the ring, and that was that. But good seeing Triple H there. And then we had the triple threat match for the Raw Tag Team titles. The Street Profits versus the Alpha Academy versus RKBro, which Riddle and Orton defend the titles. And of course, Orton and Riddle end up coming out first. And the Profits. And then the Alpha Academy, Chad Gable and Otis. So this match was just very meh. Same thing, rinse and repeat. So RK-Bro ended up winning the match where Riddle, there's a point in the match where Montez Ford tagged in. He went up to the top. He ended up trying to jump off the top onto Orton, but Riddle springboard up the rope, and he nailed a huge RKO to Montez Ford from the top rope. That was a awesome spot there, where Riddle just springing from the rope, laying out Montez Ford with the RKO from the top rope. That was cool. So Orton then ended up catching Gable, delivered an RKO to Gable, and there you go. RK-Bro retained the Raw Tag Team titles. Predictable. We all knew that RK-Bro was going to retain the titles. Post-match, we had the Profits end up coming into the ring. And they ended up meeting RK-Bro in there. They had the red cups. The Profits ended up giving RK-Bro 2 drinks. They poured the other drinks in RK-Bro's cups. They ended up doing a toast. And they ended up stopping. And they invited Gable Steveson to come into the ring. Gable Steveson ended up coming into the ring, and he also ended up taking a red cup. The Profits, RK-Bro, and Gable, they ended up having a WrestleMania toast, but then Chad Gable came in. Chad Gable smacked the cup out of Gable Stevenson's hand. Steveson took off his shirt as RK-Bro and the Profits ended up getting out of the ring. Gable ended up getting on the mic, and he ended up telling Steveson to shush. That's the whole stupid, lame shit that Chad Gable does. I hate it. I hate the whole thing where Chad Gable does the shush and the thank you. It just makes him look fucking lame. So Steveson launched Chad Gable with a belly throw, and pretty much that was basically that. But overall, this match was just very meh. Rinse and repeat, as always. And then we went to Omos versus Bobby Lashley, which this match shouldn't have been on the WrestleMania card. Same for McIntyre and Corbin at night 1. We could have had this match on a random Monday Night Raw. But Bobby Lashley deserves a WrestleMania match. Omos, no. We've seen Omos in the ring. Omos is terrible in the ring. He's just absolutely awful. But Bobby Lashley was the guy to take down Omos. We saw it on Monday Night Raw last week, where he ended up taking Omos off his knees. He did the same thing here. So on Monday Night Raw last week, they gave you 95% of what we were going to see going into Sunday in this match. It was the same thing. Same shit that we saw last Monday night. So Bobby Lashley ended up taking down Omos. And he ended up taking Omos down with a spear. And there you go. Bobby Lashley ended up winning the match. So Omos is now defeated. His undefeated streak has come to an end. Overall, this match was terrible. It should not have been on the WrestleMania card. It didn't even scream WrestleMania worthy or WrestleMania quality match. And then we had Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville. Anything goes match. And this match, it was fun. It was stupid, but in a fun, enjoyable way. And at the same time, very embarrassing for Sami Zayn. Because we had Chris Pontius end up coming out later on in the match. He ended up coming into the ring. He had a thong on him. And he was rubbing himself all over Sami Zayn, which was hilarious. So Sami ended up leveling him, started stomping away at him. There was at one point where Sami Zayn was trying to go under the ring. And Sami Zayn pulled out a table. And the table was covered in mouse traps. So he ended up taking that table out. Sami Zayn was looking to go for a Helluva Kick to Johnny Knoxville, which he did lay out Knoxville as soon as the match began with the Helluva Kick. And then we had Wee Man also there. Wee Man ended up attacking Sami Zayn. He ended up dropping Sami Zayn with a slam, with a scoop slam. So then we had Knoxville ended up grabbing a taser. Sami Zayn retreated out to the floor. Sami Zayn ran away, and then Sami Zayn got smacked by the huge hand that was used, I think, in Jackass 3. So Sami Zayn got smacked by that giant hand, which knocked him down, which was hilarious. And we had Sami Zayn. He went up to the top. Knoxville ended up using a pair of thongs. And then he stunned Sami Zayn. Knoxville grabbed Sami Zayn, launched him off the top, and Sami Zayn went through the table of mouse traps. So we had Wee Man and them helping out Johnny Knoxville. They helped out Knoxville by bringing a gigantic mouse trap into the ring. And the mouse trap, the gigantic mouse trap was like that big. It was like sort of like that. So they ended up rolling Sami Zayn back into the ring, and Knoxville had some trouble unhooking the mousetrap, and the mousetrap ended up hitting Sami Zayn. It trapped him, and it was easy for Knoxville to pin Sami Zayn. So there you go. Knoxville ended up pinning Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was still trapped in the mousetrap post-match. And that was that. But overall, It was embarrassing for Sami Zayn. The match was stupid, but it was stupid in a fun way. That's how you do a comedy match. When I see something done in a comedy way that's not forced, this is how it's done the right way. I don't like when comedy in wrestling is done forced. Like, take for instance the 24/7 shit. The 24/7 shit, they want you so hard to laugh at that. Well, it's not even funny. I laughed more at this match and enjoyed it more than anything I've seen with the garbage 24/7 title and the participants around it. From Akira Tozawa to R-Truth to Reggie to Dana Brooke to Tamina. I enjoyed this match more and had fun with it than any fucking shit that surrounds the 24/7 title. It was a fun match, this was. Then we had the Fatal 4-Way, Shayna Baszler and Natalya versus Liv Morgan, and Rhea Ripley versus Naomi and Sasha Banks versus Carmella and Zelina Vega for the women's tag team titles. Very boring match. Did not enjoy this. Of course, we had Sasha Banks and Naomi. They end up coming out in I think like a Lamborghini car. So, but match was just boring in my opinion. Of course, you gotta have Carmella with her hideous, ugly face mask on. Which, why are they still putting a mask on Carmella? Seriously? Stop with the mask on Carmella. Makes her look like a joke. So, at the end of the match, we had Sasha Banks and Naomi. They end up doing a double team to Carmella. And Sasha Banks and Naomi end up winning the match. And they are the new women's tag team champions. And this is Sasha Banks' first win at WrestleMania. So happy for Sasha getting her first win at WrestleMania. I'm not the hugest Sasha fan, but she's got to be happy getting her first win at a WrestleMania. So overall, boring match. And then we had the match that I was looking forward to, and it was a good match, but just the pacing was slow. It was Edge versus AJ Styles. So Styles ended up coming out, and apparently Styles was busted open. And people I saw online say, the reason why Styles was busted open because of his pyro during his entrance. But some other one that I saw online said, he might have, his face might have went into something during the pyro, and that's why he was bleeding. He was busted open. So Styles had that throughout the other match. And then Edge ended up coming out. Edge had an awesome entrance here. He stepped down from a platform. Flames were rising up. It reminded me of, him with the Brood. So flames and pyro end up shooting up as he marched his way down to the ring. It was giving off vibes of, Aleister Black's type thing that he was doing in WWE before he became Malachi Black in AEW. But this was a good match, like I said, but the pacing was slow at points. This was a physical wrestling match here between these two. So we had Styles end up rushing Edge into the corner. Edge leaned into the ropes as the referee ended up backing Styles off. Both Edge and Styles ended up blocking up. Styles ended up taking Edge to the corner, backed off. Edge ended up retreating from a swing. They ended up running the ropes, and Styles ended up nailing a drop kick. Edge ended up dropping Styles to block a arm drag from Styles. So Edge ended up launching Styles into the turnbuckles, which he went gut first. Styles then came back, delivered some chops, but Edge ended up catching him in a abdominal stretch. So, at the end of the match, we had Damian Priest end up appearing. Because Styles was going back to the apron to deliver a phenomenal forearm, but Damian Priest ended up appearing there at ringside. Styles was distracted by Priest. He ended up springboarded in for the Styles Clash, but Edge ended up knocking Styles out of the air with a spear. So Edge ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Edge ended up winning the match. Post-match, Edge was looking over at Damian Priest, but he was confused. Priest ended up getting into the ring. He ended up dropping to one knee. Edge faced him, and Edge was also on one knee. They ended up standing tall together. They ended up raising their arms in the air. And pretty much that was basically that, though. But there's talks about Edge starting this new faction. And it looks like Damian Priest might be a part of this new faction with Edge. Who else they add? Who knows? I've heard talks about Elias being added to this faction. It's rumored. I don't want to see Elias in this faction with Edge. He'll never fit. I heard they're giving Elias a gimmick change, and they made him like shave his head. I don't want to see Elias part of this new faction. You know who I want to see a part of this faction with Edge if they do it? Tommaso Ciampa. Tommaso Ciampa, I think, would fit with Edge and Damian Priest in this new faction if they do it, which they possibly will. But Edge, Damian Priest, Tommaso Ciampa. You can't go wrong with that in the faction. Tommaso Ciampa had his last match at NXT Stand and Deliver on Saturday, where Tony D'Angelo ended up defeating him. And I like Tony D'Angelo. I like his gimmick. You know, very Italian-like. But Tommaso Ciampa ended up losing, knowing that he's done with NXT because Triple H ended up coming out at the end of the match. He ended up hugging Tommaso Ciampa. So you already know right there, Tommaso Ciampa is done with NXT. He's possibly going to go to the main roster, probably on Monday Night Raw. And who knows? Hopefully he'll be a part of this faction with Edge and Damian Priest if they do it, which I know they will. But I heard, Tommaso Ciampa originally, like he didn't want to go to the main roster. He would rather retire than go to the main roster because he probably knows how the main roster is, with Vince and Bruce Pritchard booking it. He probably even knows the product up there is shit. But yeah, they're gonna be starting that faction with Edge, which I know they're gonna do. So this just pinpointed there from what we saw last night. But overall, good match, but slow pace it was. And then Mike Rome ended up announcing the attendance for night 2 of WrestleMania. And they end up botching it. So they end up saying that 78,453 were there. But the graphic on the TV, I think, said 75,000. So they botched that. And you can tell right there, WWE just makes up the attendance there. And then we had Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods versus Ridge Holland and Sheamus, which originally this was supposed to be on night 1, but then they moved it to night 2 because of time constraints. But this match was awful. This did not need to be on the WrestleMania card. Like I said, they should have put this on a random edition of SmackDown. This did not scream WrestleMania quality or WrestleMania worthy match. So Ridge Holland and Sheamus end up coming out along with Pete Dunne, or they like to call him Butch, which I don't even want to call him Butch. And then Kofi and Xavier Woods end up coming out. They were wearing gear that was inspired by Big E. Butch was tearing shit up at ringside, or Pete Dunne. So the two teams started brawling as the match got underway. Sheamus ended up getting dumped to the floor by Woods. Pete Dunne was trying to attack Kofi. Sheamus held Pete Dunne back. But Pete Dunne kept trying to interfere. Sheamus kept trying to calm him down. So Rich Holland was getting double teamed by Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. So Woods ended up dropping the straps like Big E as he leveled Rich Holland. And then, of course, Pete Dunne again, he got involved. He distracted the referee from the apron, which allowed Sheamus to hit the bro kick on Xavier Woods. Rich Holland ended up scooping Xavier Woods up for the Northern Grit. And there you go. Sheamus and Rich Holland ended up winning the match. Post-match, Pete Dunne rushed into the ring. He attacked Xavier Woods. He was yanking at Xavier Woods' braids. Sheamus and Rich Holland was trying to hold him back. And that was that. But overall, this match was awful. Did not need to be on the WrestleMania card. And then they honored the WWE Hall of Famers for 2022. We had The Undertaker end up coming out. Got a huge pop from the crowd. Which I gotta say, The Undertaker's speech at the Hall of Fame was absolutely amazing. The crowd reaction that he got on Friday night there was electric. It was one of the best ovations that I have ever heard that they gave The Undertaker. Just absolutely amazing. Made me, a little bit emotional. His speech also made me get a little emotional as well. Just, it's a star from my childhood, just retiring, going into the Hall of Fame. And, there's only one Undertaker. But his speech was absolutely amazing. And that ovation that he got was electric. The best ovation that I've ever heard wrestling fans give a superstar like that, because he deserved it. He deserved that huge ovation. So we had that, with the Hall of Fame where The Undertaker ended up coming out there, night 2. Then we went to Austin Theory versus Pat McAfee, which this was an entertaining match. The ovation that Pat McAfee got in this match was awesome. They were cheering away at his music, at Pat McAfee's music. Vince McMahon made his way down. He ended up introducing Austin Theory, future Universal Champion, as Vince ended up saying it. So Austin Theory ended up coming out. He was taking selfies while he was walking down the ramp. We had a "You Suck" chant from the crowd. You had Pat McAfee come out, and we had Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders end up coming down. And, Pat McAfee ended up making his way out. The cheerleaders ended up opening up the walkway, and he just strutted down the ramp. And Michael Cole, of course, Pat McAfee is his partner for SmackDown on the commentary team. He was just playing cheerleader throughout the match here on commentary, Michael Cole, because he was happy to see his partner, compete in the match and be in the ring. So, but Pat McAfee, very good here. If you've seen the match that he had with Adam Cole, and also the War Games match that he was involved in with, which also had Adam Cole in it, he was surprising. Pat McAfee surprised me in those matches that he had with Cole. And here, he did very good. So Pat McAfee ended up getting the win because Theory was going for the ATL. Pat McAfee ended up countering that. He ended up rolling Theory up. And Pat McAfee ended up winning the match. So post-match, Cole was going crazy on commentary. Pat McAfee ended up going into the corner, posed as, fans ended up cheering him on. Vince walked over, and he had some words with Austin Theory because Vince was sitting at ringside throughout the match, watching his boy Austin Theory there. So he was pointing up at Pat McAfee. Vince McMahon was pointing at Pat McAfee. So McAfee was looking down at both Vince and Austin Theory from the corner. Pat McAfee called Vince out. He wanted Vince to come into the ring. So it looked like Vince was going to walk away, but he ended up stopping. Vince took his coat off, and it got a big pop from the crowd. And I was like, oh God, are they going to do this? Oh God. So Vince ended up taking off his tie. He ended up taking off his shirt as McAfee ended up inviting Vince into the ring. So Michael Cole and Byron Saxton were begging Pat McAfee to apologize to the boss, to Vince. Vince took off his button-up shirt and he revealed a tank top. And of course, Vince all buffed up. So he ended up coming into the ring. A referee was in there. And so we had Vince McMahon versus Pat McAfee, a 76-year-old Vince McMahon in the ring, competing in a match in 2022. What year is this? We've seen Austin compete in a no-holds-barred match against Kevin Owens on night one. And then the next night we see a 76-year-old Vince McMahon in the ring competing against Pat McAfee. All this was Theory being down on Pat McAfee, which allowed Vince to clothesline Pat McAfee. Vince ended up sending Theory into the turnbuckles. The crowd was rallying for Pat McAfee to get back up to his feet. They ended up staring each other down from the corners. So Theory ended up hopping on the apron. He bought in a Dallas Cowboys football. He bought it in to Vince. Vince took the football, and Vince looked like he was going to punt the ball into the crowd, which I was like, when I saw him have the ball in hand and it looked like he was going to punt it, I'm like, oh, here we go. It's going to be a botch kick. But he ended up hitting Pat McAfee. He punted the ball into Pat McAfee's chest and won the match. So Vince ended up winning. This was awful. A 76-year-old Vince McMahon getting in the ring, facing Pat McAfee, looking all jacked. This was awful. We go from Austin Theory versus Pat McAfee, which was an entertaining match, and McAfee got the hugest pop there, to simply the worst match that we've seen with Vince McMahon and Pat McAfee. So post-match, Theory ended up kicking McAfee out of the ring. Vince ended up standing tall. Michael Cole checked on Pat McAfee. Theory ended up hitting the corners to pose as Vince ended up looking on. Theory ended up opening his arms for a hug from Vince. So both Vince and Theory end up embracing each other, hugging. And then we heard the glass break. AT&T Stadium exploded again as Stone Cold Steve Austin came out. Austin marched to the ring as Vince and Theory were looking on. Vince was terrified. He looked terrified. Austin came into the ring. He had a few words with Vince. And Theory then ended up attacking Austin. Austin started unloading on some punches to Theory. He delivered a stunner to Theory, which Theory sold that stunner very good. It was hilarious. He just flopped up in the air and down up to the canvas and flopped again. It was hilarious how Theory sold that stunner. So Austin kicked Theory out of the ring. So Vince was looking to start pleading with Austin. Of course, Austin and McMahon, the rivalry from the Attitude Era, one of the classic rivalries, at the time there, which we all loved. They were basically my childhood there, seeing McMahon and Austin. So we had Austin ended up talking Vince into having a beer with him. Austin ended up catching 2 beers, handed one to Vince, and you all know where this is going to be headed. So Vince ended up taking a small sip of the beer. They ended up having a toast. They chugged it. Austin kicked Vince, and he delivered the stunner to Vince, which was the worst stunner that Austin did on Vince. Linda McMahon, when Austin ended up stunning the entire McMahon family at Raw Homecoming back in 2005. Remember when Austin laid out Linda McMahon with the stunner? That was terrible. Vince topped that. That's what we saw last night when Austin dropped him with the stunner. That stunner looked absolutely awful. So we went from the best stunner on Austin Theory to the worst with Vince. That was terrible. So Austin ended up grabbing, another beer, continued his beer bash. Pat McAfee ended up cheering Austin on from ringside. Austin ended up inviting Pat McAfee into the ring. Austin gave 2 beers to McAfee, and him and McAfee were doing a beer bash, and Austin dropped McAfee with the Stone Cold Stunner. Beer ended up spinning out of McAfee's mouth. So Austin ended up tossing the football, cashed a few more beers, and what was funny was Pat McAfee was flat on his back on the outside, still chugging the beer. It was just funny. And Michael Cole was just going hard on commentary. He was like, stunner, stunner, stunner. So that was that. But really enjoyed that. Just the stunner that was done to Theory. That was a good stunner. The awful stunner delivered to Vince. And Pat McAfee, I say, he sold the stunner very well. I thought he did a good job selling the stunner. But very enjoyable segment it was. Main event time of night 2. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Where it takes all match, unification match to unify both the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship. This match, I was looking forward to it to see how WWE was going to, unify the titles. But in the end, this match was a disappointment. This match fucking sucked. It was nothing but copy and paste of the other matches that we've seen Lesnar and Reigns go at it for the past 7 years. This was awful. The Bloodline ended up coming out first. Reigns and the Usos and Paul Heyman. They marched to the ring. Reigns posed in the ring as fireworks started exploding above AT&T Stadium. Reigns got on the mic and ended up calling on WrestleMania to acknowledge him. So then Brock Lesnar came out. So Paul Heyman got on the mic. He did his own introduction for Reigns. Lesnar also interrupted. He did his own introduction. He billed himself as the cowboy ass kicker that's going to kick Reigns' ass. So he dropped the mic. The match ended up started. Lesnar ended up laughing as he immediately removed his gloves. Lesnar started to unload on Reigns, but Reigns ended up turning around. Lesnar turned Reigns around the corner, started delivering some shoulder thrusts. Reigns fought off a German suplex by Brock Lesnar, but Lesnar ended up nailing that belly-to-belly suplex, and then he delivered another one. So Lesnar was all smiles. He was stalking Reigns. He ended up hitting a third belly-to-belly suplex. So Lesnar ended up approaching Paul Heyman at ringside. Heyman ended up pleading. He kept saying, "Oh, I love you. I love you." Which Paul Heyman was begging Lesnar to take him back. He was like, "Oh, this was all Reigns' idea. This was all Reigns' idea." And this was all just a setup for Reigns to charge into Lesnar. He ended up putting Lesnar through the timekeepers area. with a spear. Reigns then returned to the ring. The referee was counted. Lesnar slowly got back up to his feet. He leapt back into the ring as the ref counted 9. There was a point where Lesnar locked in the Kimura lock, and he had locked in on Reigns. Reigns' arm looks like it dislocated, and Lesnar, as he tightened the hold on Reigns, his face turned purple because that was how hard that he was pulling on Reigns' arm. So Reigns ended up finally getting his arm on the bottom rope, but we saw Paul Heyman use his finger to get Reigns to touch to get to the bottom rope to break the hold. So Paul Heyman was yelling encouragement at Reigns, and we heard Reigns yelling at Paul Heyman. Reigns ended up yelling to Paul Heyman, "It's out," meaning his shoulder came out of place. So Lesnar ended up scooping Reigns up for the F5. Reigns slided out of that, and Reigns hit a spear, and he went for the cover. And there you go. Roman Reigns ended up winning the match, and Reigns is the new undisputed Universal Champion. So there you go. Reigns ends up holding the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship, which obviously we all knew was very predictable. So we had no Rock. The Rock didn't even come out, which, I've heard that WWE wants to get The Rock for next year's WrestleMania, and it would set off a feud between Roman Reigns and The Rock. But unfortunately, we didn't get that last night. This would have been a good way to set up the match for next year's WrestleMania if they could get The Rock, and it didn't happen. Night 2 of WrestleMania just went off very anticlimactic. The match sucked between Reigns and Lesnar. It's the same match that we see with Reigns and Lesnar a whole lot of other times that they fought. Just copy and paste it was. Hopefully this is the final match between Reigns and Lesnar. I don't want to see another Reigns and Lesnar match at all. It's got to be done after this. Now, who does Roman Reigns fight now? Who is there to fight Reigns? A lot of people are saying, it could be Drew McIntyre. And I know that's what WWE is going to do. I think Drew McIntyre is going to be next in line to face Reigns for the undisputed Universal Championship. That's what I see that WWE is going to do. But overall, night 2 of WrestleMania, not good. Night 1 was way better, in my opinion. But as a whole, WrestleMania this year was an enjoyable show. WWE came out with the win here. And it wasn't one of the worst WrestleManias that we were all anticipating it to be. It was a surprising WrestleMania. Very enjoyable show it was. But anyways, that's my thoughts on WrestleMania 38 for both Night 1 and Night 2. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And I will see you all later tonight with the Monday Night Raw review. It's Raw after WrestleMania. And we're going to see the debut of, finally, Veer Mahaan. So that's taking place tonight on Monday Night Raw. Cody Rhodes has been announced for Raw tonight. But see you all tonight with the Monday Night Raw review.